Welcome to Open BXRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. This Hispanic Heritage Month, we are honoring the often invisible essential Latino and Latin American immigrant workers across the country. Hispanics in Philanthropy is aiding and empowering these essential workers through their Essential Fund and more. Joining us now to tell us more is Jazmín Chávez. She is the Associate Vice President of Public Affairs at Hispanics in Philanthropy. Jazmín, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. So muchísimas gracias.
Claro, claro. For those who are not familiar, I gave a little introduction, but please tell us more about Hispanics and Philanthropy. What is it, and what is HIP's mission?
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sonyi, for having us on here today. So Hispanics and Philanthropy has been around for over 37 years, and contrary to the name, a lot of people think that what we do is we help rich Latinos or Hispanics figure out where their money goes. That's not what we do. For over 37 years, we've been strengthening Latino leadership, influence, and equity by leveraging philanthropic resources into impactful investments into the Latino community in Latin America, Caribbean communities. And we are actually headquartered out of the San Francisco Bay Area in Oakland. But we have a presence across the country in Miami, New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago, Phoenix, San Juan, Puerto Rico, as well as Mexico City and Costa Rica. And really our goal is to really promote stronger partnerships between organized philanthropy and Latinx communities really on the ground, whether, again, it could be in the United States, it could be in Puerto Rico, it could be in Venezuela, it could be anywhere really. And our goal is to really be able to fund and get organizations funded and connected to the right resources immediately within philanthropy. And then within philanthropy as well, we started as a PSO, a philanthropic serving organization, and today we continue to do that work. But we're also an intermediary and a donor advisor. So that means that since 2000, we've partnered with more than 175 funders to invest over $70 million in grants to more than 800 nonprofits. So there are moments where there are large funders who have an idea or who have questions about who is doing the work where, or what it is that we're seeing on the ground. And our role is to be able to provide that perspective of what is happening to Latino communities across the Americas and say, hey, give your money over here, or hey, we need money over here. And we really do that in a variety of ways to make sure that our funders are being engaged and connected directly into the community.
Gotcha. Gracias, Jazmín, for all that. I can imagine the work has, impacted a lot of Latinos that are in need at this time. And it's super important, especially during COVID-19, that these resources are allocated to so many people that are in need during these times. So I wanted to discuss, of course, the disproportionate impact that the pandemic has had on Hispanic immigrant communities. Just give me a little background on that as well, and just how HIP has, focused on this community.
Yeah, of course. And it's a really great question. I mean, I think it's no surprise for us here in New York City. I'm here in New York based in Harlem. You're in the Bronx, but everybody knows that as it hit the United States, we became ground zero for the spread of the virus. And so really early on here in the beginning of March, we immediately started to kind of put our ears to the ground and understand what was happening. We knew that what was about to happen in New York City was about to happen in the rest of the country, and really nobody was paying attention to it. Or I think people just weren't taking it as serious because they weren't living this collective trauma that I think New York Latinos were feeling, especially in Queens, especially in the Bronx, as we saw it really kind of take a stronghold. And for, at the height of the pandemic, we saw, I think at one moment, it was about 37 to 40% of the deaths in New York City were actually all Latino immigrants or Latino-based deaths. And so that for us was obviously not a surprise, as we know that our communities, especially here in New York City, but also across the country, our communities are the essential workers. They are service workers. They are even when we think of doormen here in New York, right? So these were people who we knew that there was no relief for them in the sense of they couldn't work from home. You're talking about a community that over 70% of that group cannot work from home. Especially as we're looking at day labor, domestic labor, childcare industries here in New York City, where those wells of income completely dried up. So for us, it really wasn't effectively responding to just the inequity of how the virus was hitting, but looking at the systemic failure and looking at how are we dismantling these systems that had failed us at our core. So for us, one of our larger work is really being able to flatten kind of like this inequity curve, and being able to try to figure out, based on our relationships, based on how we had done the work, and not just in the US, but really also in the Americas, about where and how quickly we could get money into the community. And so because of that, we were able to really do a few different things pretty quickly. Throughout, I think probably since April till now, we have been able to raise and give out close to $10 million. We started out really looking at farm workers. That was one group of essential workers who we immediately knew there was no break for them, right? If farm workers aren't in the field, none of us are going to get our food. So we worked with Justice for Migrant Women. Monica Ramirez was a phenomenal leader in the community in her group. And we also partnered with some concert promoters, and we created an event called Altísimo Live. And so you're talking about Kate del Castillo, Eva Longoria, we had Gloria Trevi. I mean, we had some of the big industry names and actors come in and help us raise. I think we raised over $600,000 just by everyday donors in probably the course of 4 hours at night. And that for us was like, okay, we know that there's a hunger for people to do something despite the threat of something so big. So we started with that Farm Worker Pandemic Relief Fund. We've been able to raise $3 million for farm workers. We've provided, I think, over 5,000 masks to farm workers that HIP funded directly ourselves, especially here in New York State. I think in New York, we sent about 3,000 masks upstate and into Long Island. And that was like April, right? This was before we knew if we needed masks. This was just like as a safety precaution of like, let's get you something. And then from there, it kind of became our work around our essential fund. And that for us was to really provide relief efforts and provide resources to the community to help them cover, because the conversations that we heard from organizations were they had really pulled out all strings, everything that they had in their budgets, operating, marketing, outreach, to just get people rent money, grocery money. Funeral expenses was a huge one in New York City. And so we created this fund to be able to give organizations, I think close to $3.5 million, to say, here's some money that we know you need to provide immediate relief and help us get it out into the community. And this was really across the country. And then with that, we also did, we have a fund called the Power Up Fund that we started last year. And the goal for that is to really build wealth within the Latino community and be able to help us support our Latino small business owners. But with that, what we did and pivoted pretty quickly is to be able to raise funds for Latino and Black-owned small businesses here in the United States. And just this last week, we had a $3 million grant from Google for us to specifically be able to focus on California, Texas, and New York, and get $5,000 grants into small businesses, along with a partnership with Eureka, which is a phenomenal entrepreneurship platform, to be able to provide coaching and assistance so that small businesses could power up and they could scale out and get coaching without feeling like they were going to go under, because we already knew that 32% of Latino small businesses had been forced to close in the last couple of months, and over 90% of Black and Latino owned, especially, and also women-led small businesses did not get any PPP loans early on in the year. So that for us was another way for us to kind of come in and try to support also our small business workers. And with a $3 million grant from Google, anybody can go, any small business owner in California, Texas, and New York can visit powerup.fund.org/powerup. And you can apply to get a $5,000 grant to support your business and to receive that coaching. And then I know I've talked a lot, but you can tell I'm really excited because we did all this work. But these are the last few things I'll say. We also did work. This isn't just US based. We also raised funds for our Rapid Response Migration Fund in Mexico and Latino America, where we raised close to $1 million there to get immediate help in Latino America as well, Mexico, Central America, get people what they needed there to be able to help and sustain the community. And then finally, we also realized at the height of this came at in time of census outreach and voter engagement. So we also created a civic participation fund where we're really leveraging close to $1.25 million to get that money into the community, for the community to be able to shift how they're doing voter engagement and census outreach digitally. And to be able to supplement what they're already doing and make sure that we're counted and make sure that Latinos get to the polls in less than almost 30 days now. So.
Yeah, pero talk about boots on the ground with Hispanic Philanthropy, because, I asked, what have you guys been doing to support the community? She's like, well, Let me bring out some receipts, girl. Amazing work. Thank you for sharing that, Jazmín. I also wanted to ask about your upcoming HipGive virtual boot camp. Who is it for, and how can folks sign up for that?
Yeah, so thank you so much. So HipGive.org is the only Latino and free crowdfunding platform. So this is open to any organization out there who is looking for a platform to be able to raise funds, but maybe you don't have a PayPal account or you don't have an ActBlue or whatever those big ones are. And so what we do with hipgive.org, we have a wonderful team there who will actually help you understand like the basics of crowdfunding and understand some of the best practices for you to be able to really create your own projects. And then part of HIP, what we do is that we then go in and we really promote your work on behalf of our brands of HIP and HipGive. So these workshops are specifically focused for anybody who wants to create a crowdfunding campaign. They are free, they're open to the public, and I'm actually looking for the dates right now so I can share those with folks. Of course, now I lost in my thing, but I'll be able to share those dates. But really, if you're a Latino small profit organization, or I don't think it can be an individual, so it's not like GoFundMe where you can create those individualized campaigns, because you do need to have a nonprofit attached to it. But we basically go in and just teach you the basics of fundraising, right? So we tell you how to tell a compelling story. We help you understand how to really make that ask. And then we also help you understand, like, this is how you want to engage with your audience as you're fundraising, right? So if you have a goal of $10,000, you're not just going to say, hey, everybody give me $10,000, but there really are also psychological tactics in terms of how it is that we're able to move people along in any crowdfunding campaign. For all of you who've ever donated a Kickstarter, right, you're creating like an urgency and you're giving the perks and the benefits. So we help people understand the psychology behind crowdfunding, so that even though the goal is 10,000, you're making small incremental asks throughout your campaign, so that you say, who can help us get to 100? Once you get to 100, who can get us to 300? From 300, who's going to be the lucky people that get us to 500? And so you're really moving the people along and creating a story of like excitement and urgency, and it's also supporting these really incredible campaigns. And if you're someone who has a little bit of money in your pocket and you want to learn where to put your money towards, hipgive.org is a wonderful platform that is all Latino-based organizations across the Americas, and you can find it based on a topic. If you're really into children's rights, migration, gender equity, and you can put your money there. So our boot camps that are coming up are free, and you can find them on hipgive.org. And you can also follow us on social media at HipGive, and they are also sharing the webinars there.
Right, thank you. And to loop back to how both funders and those in need can reach out to Hispanics and Philanthropy for help and, to learn more and to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So anybody who wants to, I think really taking a step back, I think the core of our work is to really democratize philanthropy. I think as Latinos, we are everyday philanthropists. Like, for those of us who have been to church, go to church, like that little hat that they pass, la canastita is philanthropy, right? Las tandas, right? Another big component of our work is we're working on digital giving circles. But we know in our communities, I'm a Mexicana, so tandas are very real. It's the way that our community saves and passes along the hat to each other internally within families or within groups. And so for us, the idea of being a philanthropist isn't something that is like at the level of like Jeff Bezos, right? Like, we're not talking about that type of, we're talking about like the everyday philanthropists are the abuelos, your tias, ourselves, in terms of how it is that you want to engage. And so us at everyday level, we can engage, and we welcome you to engage on any part of our campaigns. If you want to support Power Up Fund, if you want to support HipGive campaigns, if you want to support the essential workers, we have all that information on our site. But if you have a lot of money and you want to bring it to HIP, and being able to help advise you of where to put that money, especially so critical in this moment, our role is to get that money directly into the community as fast as we can. So you can always reach out to us directly from our website. You can reach out to me, Jazmín at hiponline.org, and we will connect you to our programmatic teams and be able to allow you to do some good, and really kind of give back in a way that is really impactful and that really elevates, especially the community at this time. And I think that's the thing, right? I think things might seem really bleak in the moment, but at the same time, we have incredible stories of resilience. And I think that at the end of the day is what we also like have to share, right? Our grantees are shifting and they are innovative, and the ingenuity behind how they've shifted their strategies and how they've shifted their outreach and the joy that they continue to bring into their work is also something that is really wonderful. And we'll be sharing some of those stories in the coming weeks so that people can also understand that even though something feels really, really big, there's work that can be done hyper locally on the ground, and we're hoping to connect people to their local organizations as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Jazmín, again for your time today and for sharing more about HIP.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Folks, again, you can follow HIP, Hispanics in Philanthropy, at BHipGive on Instagram, Hispanics in Philanthropy on Facebook, and on Twitter at BHipGive. You can also visit their website at hiponline.org to learn more. We'll be right back.